What if love could rewrite your destiny, even in the darkest moments? Quang and Linda, two souls bound by hardship, dared to dream of a brighter tomorrow. In their quiet nights, they imagine a small home, a child named Sophia, and the tender moment when she first calls them Mama and Papa. That dream becomes their strength, their light in the storm. This is a story of hope, love, and faith that never fades. Don't forget to subscribe and follow their journey, because sometimes dreams are the first step toward reality. The rain had begun to fall again, soft, steady, and almost melodic, as Quang and Linda sat side by side on the narrow wooden bench outside their small rented room. The night air was cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and the rustle of leaves dancing in the breeze. Above them, the flickering light from a single bulb cast long, gentle shadows across their faces, outlining the quiet tenderness between two souls who had learned to find warmth and simplicity. It was one of those nights when words felt unnecessary. Silence itself became a language, spoken through the way Linda rested her head on Quang's shoulder, or how his hand instinctively found hers beneath the thin blanket they shared. They had talked for hours earlier about life, about struggles, about the uncertain tomorrows. But as the rain deepened, their voices faded into a peaceful stillness. In that moment, they both began to dream. It was not the kind of dream built from luxury or success, but something purer. A small home at the edge of a quiet town, surrounded by green fields, with sunlight streaming through half-open curtains in the morning. In the heart of that dream stood a tiny crib, white and soft, where a little girl slept soundly, her breathing light and rhythmic like the rain outside. Linda smiled faintly at the thought. She could see herself standing by the window, her hair loose, humming a lullaby while holding their daughter, a baby with bright eyes and a curious smile that mirrored both their parents. Quang would be there too, fixing something in the yard, perhaps building a swing from an old oak tree. And when he came inside, his hands rough but warm, he'd kiss their child's forehead with a tenderness that would melt every shadow left in their hearts. They already had a name for her, Sophia. To them, that name meant light, wisdom, and new beginnings, everything they longed for after years of uncertainty. Sometimes, Linda would whisper it softly before falling asleep, just to feel hope take shape on her tongue. Quang would listen, half smiling in the dark, imagining what it would be like to hear a tiny voice calling him Dad for the first time. It was that thought, so fragile, so impossibly beautiful, that made his chest tighten and his eyes sting with something unspoken. Outside, thunder rumbled far away, yet inside, their little world, everything felt safe. The rain was their lullaby, the dim light their candle of faith. Even though reality was still harsh, bills unpaid, work uncertain, the weight of tomorrow pressing in, they found solace in this shared vision of a life not yet lived, but deeply believed in. For them, happiness wasn't something to be found. It was something they were slowly building, piece by piece, in moments like this, in the soft silence, in the clasp of hands, and the unspoken vow that they would hold on to each other, no matter how long the storm lasted. As Linda lifted her gaze to meet Quang's, her eyes shimmered with quiet strength. "Do you ever think we'll get there?" she whispered. Quang smiled, brushing a strand of wet hair from her cheek. "We already are," he said softly. "Every time we dream together, we're one step closer." And so they stayed like that, two dreamers beneath the rain, hearts full of longing, yet peaceful, knowing that sometimes love doesn't need promises of forever. Sometimes it only needs the courage to keep dreaming of tomorrow. In the soft edges of their dream, morning light began to spill gently through the lace curtains of their imagined home. The scent of fresh bread drifted from the kitchen, mingling with the laughter of a child somewhere nearby. Linda was sitting on the floor, surrounded by a sea of pastel-colored toys, while Quang knelt beside her, pretending to fix the wheel of a wooden cart. Between them, their daughter, little Sophia, sat wobbling on her tiny legs, her hair a soft tangle of gold and brown, her cheeks flushed with life. She looked from one parent to the other, her bright eyes wide with curiosity, as if trying to memorize their every feature. Then, it happened, that fragile, miraculous moment that would live forever in their hearts. Sophia opened her mouth, and in the smallest, sweetest voice, shaped the world with two trembling syllables. Mama, Papa. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even clear, but it was real. The room seemed to stop breathing. Linda froze, her hands clutching the edge of the rug, her lips parting in disbelief. For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy, thick with awe, and then came the rush of tears, the laughter, the joy so pure it felt almost holy. Quang blinked, his eyes wet, his chest rising and falling as though the air had suddenly turned to light. He reached for Sophia, lifting her high into the air as her giggles rang out like the sound of bells. "Say it again, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice trembling with laughter and tears. Sophia clapped her hands, delighted by their joy, repeating the sound, "Papa, Mama," as though the words were little gifts she was offering them over and over. Linda covered her mouth, her whole body shaking with emotion. She moved closer, wrapping her arms around both of them, and in that circle, father, mother, child, the world outside ceased to exist. The rain, the worries, the long nights, the years of uncertainty, all of it dissolved into that single moment. It was as if every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every silent prayer had led them here, to this tiny miracle in their arms. Quang pressed his forehead against Linda's, his voice low and reverent. "She knows us," he murmured, as though afraid to break the spell. "She called for us." Linda nodded through her tears, her smile trembling. "She chose us," she replied. "Out of everyone in this world, she called us her own." Outside, the sunlight shifted, spilling gold across the floorboards, turning the ordinary into something sacred. Sophia leaned against Linda's chest, her small hand reaching for Quang's face, tracing the outline of his nose, his lips, as though she were memorizing the touch of love itself. And when her little fingers brushed his cheek, he closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the fierce, uncontainable tenderness that rose inside him. That was the moment when they understood what true happiness meant. Not wealth, not success, not the escape from struggle, but this: a child's laughter, a shared breath, the sound of their name spoken by the tiny voice they had brought into the world. It was love made visible, love made eternal. In the warmth of that dream, Linda whispered a prayer she didn't even realize she was saying. May this moment come true. Someday. And though they would soon wake up to the sound of rain and the cold air of reality, the image of Sophia's smile lingered, a light so bright it followed them even into waking. Because once you've dreamed of being called Mama and Papa, no darkness can ever truly reach you again. The dream lingered even after the morning light faded. When Quang slowly opened his eyes, the soft rhythm of rain was still there, patient, persistent, like the echo of Sophia's laughter that refused to leave his mind. For a few seconds, he didn't move. The world between dream and waking felt fragile, like a soap bubble shimmering before it bursts. Linda was still asleep beside him, her hand resting lightly on his chest, her face serene. In the pale dawn light that slipped through the window, she looked almost unreal, peaceful, untouched by the weight of the world they carried. He didn't want to wake her. Instead, Quang watched her breathing, slow and steady, and thought about how strange life was, how two people who had once been broken, alone and wandering, could find solace in each other's company. Their love wasn't grand or perfect. It was quiet and stubborn, like the flame of a candle that refused to go out no matter how strong the wind blew. That dream of Sophia, her laughter, her voice, still pulsed in his chest like a heartbeat that wasn't entirely his own. It felt more than a dream. It felt like a promise. Linda stirred, her eyes fluttering open, hazy with sleep. For a moment, she looked confused, caught between dream and reality. Then she smiled faintly, as if she already knew what he was thinking. "I saw her again," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Quang nodded, his throat tight. "Me too." There was a pause, tender, wordless, as both of them sat there letting the memory of their dream fill the space between heartbeats. "She said, 'Mama,'" Linda continued softly, her eyes glistening. "Do you think one day we'll really hear it?" Quang reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "Yes," he said, and the certainty in his tone surprised even him. "Maybe not today, maybe not soon, but someday we will. I know it." For a long time, they simply sat there, the rain drumming a gentle rhythm outside, the music of their small, imperfect life. And in that music, there was hope, the kind of hope that grows quietly, like wildflowers pushing through cracks in the pavement. They both knew the road ahead would still be rough. There would still be sleepless nights, unpaid bills, and moments of fear. But something had changed, something invisible yet powerful. The dream had given them strength, a reason to keep moving forward. Linda leaned her head on Quang's shoulder, her voice trembling but full of warmth. "You know what's strange? Even when things feel impossible, when I close my eyes and see her, see us, it's like all the dark things just disappear." Quang smiled faintly. Maybe that's what faith really is. Not religion, not luck, just believing in something beautiful before it happens. Outside, the clouds began to thin. The first hint of sunlight slipped through, turning the raindrops on the window into tiny glittering beads. The air smelled of earth and renewal, as if the world itself had been washed clean. Quang rose, opened the small window, and let the breeze flow in. It brushed gently against their faces, cool, alive, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings. In that quiet, with their dreams still fresh in their minds, they didn't feel trapped anymore. They didn't feel poor or lost or forgotten. They felt alive, part of something larger than the hardships that surrounded them. And though Sophia existed only in their dream, her presence lingered like sunlight on their skin, a soft reminder that love, once imagined deeply enough, can begin to take shape in the real world. Linda reached for Quang's hands once more, her eyes full of quiet conviction. "Someday she'll call us for real," she whispered. Quang smiled, pressing her hand to his lips. "Someday," he echoed, and for the first time in a long while, they both truly believed it.
Xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Lý Tưởng Mila Review. Vậy là trong tập phim hôm nay của chúng ta thì Linda và Quang đã có khoảnh khắc ngồi lại với nhau và mường tượng về cảnh tương lai khi mà con gái đầu lòng của Quang và Linda là bé Sophia chào đời. Và khoảng khắc khi mà Sophia cất tiếng gọi bố và mẹ sẽ làm trái tim của Quang và Linda tan chảy. Chỉ cần nghĩ đến giây phút đó thôi mà Quang và Linda đã thấy hạnh phúc. Những ngày u ám của cuộc sống hiện tại cũng đã được xua tan. Và liệu rằng mong ước ngon miệng đơn giản đó của Quang và Lina hay không sẽ được thể hiện trong các câu chuyện tiếp theo sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh. Các bạn hãy bấm vào nút đăng ký kênh để nhận được thông báo mới nhất về tập phim sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh nha. Cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại. Bye bye.